my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I am in front of the bookshelf today. And if any of you have kids with unfettered access to the bookshelves, you know how difficult it is to keep them organized. So this is about as organized as it gets because they're always pulling something out and reading it, which is the point. So it's fun, but these are my kind of disorganized bookshelves, mostly with kids' books, but you know, a few others mixed in. So I have some books that I am super excited to talk about today. So let's just jump into it. So this first book that I want to talk about was a recommendation from Audrey at Audrey Approved. So I will make sure to link her channel down below. She always has such good book recommendations. This is All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Maria Remarque. And this was written back in 1928. And this is talking about World War I and what life was like in the trenches. So this is a heavy topic. It is a heavy book, but it is so real about how things were in the trenches. And I think if you want an understanding of what war is like, this really gives you that kind of perspective. So I thought it was really well done, meaningful, and a stark look at wartime, especially in World War I and the horror that was the trenches. I don't know if you can fault this book at all for anything because it is such a real look at what happened during World War I. So highly recommend. This was a very good book. Now, this next book was called All the Living and the Dead by Haley Campbell. And this is an exploration of the different people that work with death. And so she talks about executioners, she talks about people who work in crematoriums, people who are funeral workers, people who clean up after crime scenes, all people who study cadavers, all sorts of people who work with the dead. Now, it was written really interestingly because I felt like it read more like a personal memoir of the author and not necessarily just a unbiased look at these professions, but I kind of get it if you look at it from that. If you're looking for like a completely unbiased look at work, people who work with death, I don't think this is really it. It talks about so many things, but it's her personal interviews with these people, why she went and talked to them, how she felt about it. I feel like it had a lot more of her personal take on what it all meant, and she was very present in the narrative, if that makes sense. But that being said, it was a little bit strange for this type of book for me. I thought, wait, why is she in this book so much? But I liked the discussion of death and how society views death, and there were a lot of things that were just very interesting to think about. Why do we not associate with more dead people? She mentions one of the I think it was one of the funeral workers she talked to said that the first dead body you see should not be a loved one. It should be someone else because you don't want the shock of seeing death and the shock of seeing a loved one all at once. And just, it was very interesting to just think about what customs we have around death, how you have compassion and love for people who have passed on, and how you can desensitize yourself as well to things like death and why that happens and what we can do and things. I thought that there were a lot of really good discussions. So while it had some parts that were stronger than others, I really think that it was interesting and not like something I've read before. So I really did enjoy it overall, and I do recommend this one. All right, the next book was a recommendation from Caitlin at Bandy's Books. So make sure to check out her channel. I will link it down below. And I read A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. This is following our main character, Sam, who is going to check on her mom because her brother says that their mom is acting a little bit erratically. And she goes to check on her mom and finds that things are a little off, and maybe it's that the house is haunted somehow, right? So get our good haunted house story. That's what I was expecting. And I knew that this was more of a supernatural mystery. So I wasn't expecting a Scooby-Doo mystery, but what I really liked was that this main character was someone you would want on your side during a Scooby-Doo mystery, right? She was very logical. She thought things through. If something horrific happened, she thought, that's strange. Let's figure out why that happened. There must be a logical explanation. And so I really liked the main character in this. She just was really down to earth and really thought things through. You know how sometimes you read haunted house kind of books and you're like, don't go in the room, what are you doing? Where I read this and I'm like, well, she has a good point. It's worth it to check that out. Like, because she was so systematic and so thoughtful in how she was approaching the whole haunted house vibe, I really liked the main character. And so this didn't turn out to be a Scooby-Doo mystery, but slight spoiler here, so skip the next like 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it, but I didn't like how in the end, even though it wasn't a logical reveal, I wanted her to have solved things by her intellect and her logical thought process, and I felt like it was a little too, and she's magic, and I didn't really love that. Okay, end of spoilers, but overall, I really enjoyed my time with this book. I didn't love how it all ended up, but I thought the main character was really compelling, and it was an interesting kind of story, perfect for a good Halloween read. I really enjoyed this one. This last book was a recommendation from Scott over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and this was The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. Now, I wasn't quite sure when I got into this book what to expect. So we have our main character, Geeta, and her husband disappeared 5 years ago. He just disappeared. Now the town, it's a small community, and they start spreading rumors that she has killed her husband, right? So she's a little bit of an outcast in the town when a woman in the town comes to her and says, hey, I want you to help me kill my husband too. And kind of leads her down this path. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. This is set in India and it has a lot of very strong societal critiques, and it talks a lot about some really heavy subjects like, abuse, rape, caste systems, police brutality. There is a lot of heavy things in this, but what made this so great, I feel like, was that it was a humorous book, but it didn't take any of those heavy topics and make light of them and treat them in a disrespectful sort of way. They were treated as the serious and horrible things that they were, but it kind of had a dark humor that made it fun to read, at the same time being a good critique of society. So it was a weird book. Like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, it actually is kind of genius. I first got through it and I was like, okay. And the more I think about it, the more I just really liked it. I think it had some really good characters as well. I think a lot of times we find characters in a story like this to either be, oh yeah, women supporting women, we're all grouping together, or you get the catty backbiting, and I feel like you got a lot of both of that, and it was because these were real women. Like, they felt very real, and they were talking and acting like real women who are in a society that is structured against them, you know, and they're more multifaceted than a lot of times I feel like women are portrayed. And so I liked this. Our main character wasn't always strong and knew what she wanted to do. She was freaking out, and then she was strong at other points, and, like, you know, more complicated looks at people than I feel like I see a lot. I really just kind of enjoyed it. It had some really kind of funny moments, some really heartbreaking moments, and just ended right. I feel like I don't have any huge complaints about it. It just ended in a way that left me feeling a little bit hopeful, but still understanding that not everything was fixed. And I just think it was done well. I tore through this book. I could not stop reading it. And when I did finish, I felt really satisfied. Like, this was a good read. It also just kind of energized me in that I'm more excited to read other books. Like, you know, one of those books that like fixed things. I feel like this did it a little bit. So overall, I really enjoyed it. And that is what I have read the past little while. I will be back soon. I think I might be doing a tag video soon, try out something different. And as always, I will be back in the next week or so with another book wrap up. So if you have thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments down below. And thank you all so much for watching and supporting. I got to over 600 subscribers, which is insane to me. So thank you so much for your support and for watching. And I will see you all on the next one.